the hero who walked to his own death. When people discuss the greatest heroes in Frieren beyond Journey's End, one name inevitably dominates the conversation: Himmel, the smiling hero who defeated the Demon King, the symbol of hope, the man whose legacy shaped an entire era. But hidden beneath the legends and statues exists another hero, a man who may have carried a burden heavier than Himmel himself, a man who never received glory, a man history almost forgot, a man who knowingly marched toward certain death, the hero of the South. At first glance, he appears almost insignificant. His screen time is brief, his story is fragmented, his life is mostly told through implication rather than direct narration, and yet the deeper one examines his character, the more terrifyingly profound he becomes. Because the hero of the South is not merely a warrior, he represents one of the most psychologically complex forms of heroism ever written in fantasy. Most heroes fight because they believe they can win. The hero of the South fought despite knowing he couldn't. Most heroes possess hope. The hero of the South existed beyond hope. Most heroes dream of becoming legends. The hero of the South accepted being forgotten. Most heroes sacrificed themselves for a chance of victory. The hero of the South sacrificed himself knowing victory would belong entirely to someone else. His story asks one of the most uncomfortable psychological questions imaginable. What remains of heroism when hope itself has been removed? What happens when a person knows the future with absolute certainty? What happens when courage can no longer rely on possibility? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of mind willingly chooses death for a future it will never live to see? To understand the hero of the South, we must first understand a terrifying psychological reality. Hope is not merely an emotion. Hope is the fuel of human existence. Without it, most people collapse. Without it, motivation dies. Without it, meaning evaporates. Yet somehow the hero of the South continued walking forward, not because he expected reward, not because he desired recognition, not because he believed he would survive, but because someone had to. And in that sense, he may represent the purest hero in the entire series. The death of hope, action under determinism. To understand the hero of the South, we must first understand the psychological importance of uncertainty. Human beings are creatures of possibility. Every decision we make is built upon uncertainty. When a student studies for an exam, they don't know the outcome. When an entrepreneur starts a business, they don't know whether it will succeed. When a soldier enters battle, they don't know whether they will survive. Hope emerges from uncertainty. The possibility of success creates motivation. The possibility of survival creates courage. The possibility of happiness creates perseverance. Without uncertainty, hope disappears. And without hope, human psychology begins to break down. This is where the hero of the South becomes extraordinary, because unlike everyone around him, uncertainty did not exist. His precognition was effectively flawless. He didn't predict possibilities. He saw certainties. The future was not a mystery, it was a fact. Imagine living in a world where tomorrow has already happened. Imagine knowing every major event of your life before it occurs. Imagine knowing precisely how your story ends. For most people, such knowledge would be devastating. Psychologists often discuss the concept of learned helplessness. When individuals believe outcomes cannot be changed, motivation collapses. Action begins to feel meaningless. Effort becomes pointless. The will to struggle disappears. The hero of the South should have become the ultimate victim of learned helplessness. Yet he became its exact opposite. Why? Because he underwent a fundamental transformation in the meaning of action itself. Traditional heroism, traditional fantasy heroes operate according to a simple formula. Danger exists, failure is possible, victory is possible, therefore courage means acting despite risk. This framework defines countless protagonists. Even when odds appear impossible, there remains uncertainty, there remains hope, there remains the chance that everything will work out. The hero of the South existed outside this framework. There was no chance, there was no uncertainty, there was no possibility, only certainty. He knew exactly what would happen. He knew he would die. He knew the Seven Sages would kill him. He knew Schlacht would be waiting. He knew he would never see the future he was protecting. The outcome was fixed, and yet he acted anyway. This changes the entire psychological meaning of courage. He wasn't brave because he faced danger. He was brave because he accepted inevitability. There is a profound difference. Most heroes ask, "Can I win?" The hero of the South asked, "How should I lose?" And that question transforms him into something almost mythological. Fighting to lose correctly. One of the most fascinating aspects of his psychology is that he wasn't pursuing victory. He was pursuing optimization. His objective was not survival. His objective was not glory. His objective was not even defeating all his enemies. His objective was to create the best possible future outcome. This meant carefully managing his own death. Think about how disturbing this concept truly is. Most warriors enter battle attempting to maximize their chances of survival. The hero of the South entered battle attempting to maximize the value of his death. His life became a strategic resource, a sacrifice to be spent efficiently. Every step he took was measured against a future he would never experience. Every decision became an investment in someone else's victory. This requires an almost incomprehensible level of psychological maturity, because human beings are naturally self-centered, not selfish, self-centered. Our minds are designed to prioritize our own experiences, our own survival, our own happiness. The hero of the South somehow transcended this instinct. His identity became detached from personal outcomes. Instead, he viewed himself as a component within a larger historical process, not the destination, the bridge, not the king, the foundation, not the hero, the predecessor. This perspective is extraordinarily rare, and it explains why his story feels simultaneously inspiring and tragic. The existential burden. Existential philosophers have long argued that uncertainty is essential for meaning, because if the future is fixed, then freedom becomes questionable, choice becomes questionable, responsibility becomes questionable. The hero of the South exists at the center of this dilemma. If he knew the future perfectly, was he truly free, or was he merely acting out a script? This question creates the deepest layer of his tragedy, because even if his future was predetermined, his emotional experience remained real. He still felt fear, he still felt loneliness, he still felt exhaustion, he still understood what he was giving up. Knowing the ending does not eliminate suffering. In many ways, it intensifies it. Imagine attending the funeral of someone you love. Now imagine attending that funeral every day for years, because you already know exactly when it will occur. That is the psychological reality the hero of the South endured. His death happened long before he actually died. He carried it with him constantly. Every sunrise, every conversation, every battle, every moment. The future was already sitting beside him, waiting, watching, and he never looked away. Courage beyond hope. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding people have about courage is believing courage requires fearlessness. It doesn't. Courage requires action despite fear. But the hero of the South reveals an even deeper truth. There exists a form of courage beyond hope itself, a courage that survives after optimism dies, a courage that survives after victory becomes impossible, a courage that survives after the future has already been lost. This is what makes him so psychologically unique. He demonstrates that meaning does not necessarily come from success. Meaning can come from contribution, meaning can come from duty, meaning can come from ensuring someone else succeeds. The hero of the South embodies a terrifying form of altruism. He wasn't fighting for his future, he was fighting for Himmel's future, for Frieren's future, for humanity's future, for a world he would never personally enjoy. And perhaps that is why his story resonates so deeply, because at its core, the hero of the South represents humanity at its best. Not humanity chasing reward, not humanity chasing recognition, not humanity chasing survival, but humanity choosing responsibility despite knowing there will be no personal payoff. A man who walked knowingly toward death, a man who abandoned hope without abandoning purpose, a man who transformed inevitability into meaning. And this is only the beginning of understanding who he truly was, because if knowing your own death is terrifying, knowing it completely alone may be even worse. Absolute isolation, the man who lived inside a future nobody else could see. If the first tragedy of the hero of the South was that he knew he would die, then the second tragedy was that he had to carry that knowledge completely alone. Most people underestimate how much of human psychology depends upon shared reality. Human beings are social creatures. We endure suffering by sharing it. We survive fear by speaking about it. We overcome uncertainty together. When life becomes difficult, we seek comfort from others because we assume they inhabit the same reality we do. But what happens when nobody else lives in the same reality as you? What happens when every person around you sees possibility while you see certainty? What happens when everyone else is living in the present while you are already standing in the future? The hero of the South was not merely lonely, he existed in a form of psychological isolation so extreme that almost no human being could truly understand it. Because his burden wasn't something he carried, his burden was the reality he inhabited, the curse of seeing too far. Imagine for a moment that you possess flawless precognition, not guesses, not instincts, not possibilities, certainties. You know who will live, you know who will die, you know which kingdoms will fall, you know which friendships will break, you know which wars are inevitable, and most horrifying of all, you know exactly how your own story ends. At first this sounds like power. Fantasy stories often portray future sight as an advantage, a blessing, a weapon, but psychologically speaking, perfect foresight may be one of the most horrifying abilities imaginable, because uncertainty is not merely a limitation, it is also protection. Most people don't realize this. We often wish we could know the future, but ignorance serves an important emotional function. It allows hope to survive. It allows us to imagine alternatives. It allows us to believe things might somehow work out. The hero of the South was stripped of that protection. He could not lie to himself. He could not dream of miracles. He could not pretend. Reality stood naked before him, and reality had already condemned him. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe.